Yes, it is true. I'm closing my online store because of this kettlebell brand, and rightfully so. In this video, I want to share who is behind this kettlebell brand, what is it all about. I'm going to give you my thought process, and I want to give you the reasons why I consider this type of kettlebell the best kettlebell ever to grace the fields of planet Earth. And if you're over 40 and you want more muscle, more strength, less fat without going to the gym twice as fast, download my free ebook in the first link in the description. Grüezi miteinander, Gregory von LEBESTARK here. This is going to be a longer video. It's a dedicated video to one of the best kettlebells ever made, and to my friend Nikolai, who's behind this product, and that's why I have timestamps right down there in the description. So let me give you a little bit of history. When I got started with kettlebells, I started with so-called fitness competition kettlebells. Back then I didn't even knew what that was. And I remember even way back when I was doing an education to get certified so I can offer my services to insurance companies who then pay back our clients. This coach there said, Gregory, when you pick up kettlebells, make sure it's competitions because they're all the same size and therefore you don't have to adapt and change your technique. And I took this with me. And so that's the reason why I bought these fitness competition kettlebells from Mega Fitness. By the way, these guys are awesome. I had a great collaboration with them. And I've bought a lot of stuff that I have in the gym right here from these guys. So kudos to them. Now, the issue is the following with these fitness competition kettlebells. They are filled, right? So they have this mold, then they fill the kettlebell with some kind of material. And once you put these kettlebells through the ringer, they break. And some of these kettlebells even broke when they got here. So you pick it up and you hear this rustling inside the bell, which is annoying, and it might even change the weight and the feeling of the kettlebell. So this prompted me to create my own. So I talked to a couple of folks that I know in the field, and they were all acting as gatekeepers. And they were all like, well, if you don't order like 10 tons, we won't be able to produce one or make you one. And all of a sudden, this Chinese supplier reaches out to me. I think the minimum order quantity was like 500 kilograms or a ton. And I was able to manage this. So then I got started with my own brand of kettlebells, the LS kettlebell. I call it the Superflow. So then I was restocking my whole gym with these kettlebells. And the reason why I wanted to get them made is because I wanted hollow core bells. And the history behind hollow core is very interesting. There seems to be a guy, I think it was America Kettlebells or Kettlebells USA. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit because that's a story that somebody shared with me on my podcast. So this one guy came up with this idea of the hollow core concept of the kettlebell. Then he made a big mistake by manufacturing his kettlebell overseas. And what they did was they copied and stole his idea. And so all of a sudden, everybody was using that hollow core concept. And that made me realize that if you don't have a legion of gargoyle lawyers like Apple do, you are stepping on very thin ice if you choose to do manufacturing overseas. So I've restocked my own gym with those hollow core. They felt awesome because of an idea, because of this concept that I'm going to share in a second. And then Nikolai from ProKettlebell reached out. It was a couple of months later after restocking the whole gym. And he was like, yo, I know you got your own brand of kettlebells, but I wanted to send you mine. Are you interested in trying it out? And I said, hey, of course, send it over. He sent it over, and here we are. I picked it up for a spin, and I was like, wow. Wow. The major difference. It was felt. I enjoyed it immediately. And I remember I only used the 24 kg from that point on because I asked him to ship me a 24. Because of the reason that I only wanted to use the Pro Kettlebell, I had to be transparent and honest with myself. And I reached out to Nikolai and I said, you know what? I got to get more of these and I got to stop selling our own brand. And I have to restock again for the third time my whole gym, or at least part of it, with the Pro Kettlebell, and that's what we are in the process of doing. And what I think is interesting, that people credit the transparency and honesty to my personality and tell me that this is not common, that somebody is honest about having his or her own idea, and then somebody else comes along with the same idea but better executed, and then these guys adjust and say, you know what, this guy's actually the better one. I had the same idea, but this is the better kettlebell in that regard. But I would be intellectually dishonest with myself, and my parents taught me that integrity is key. So here I stand. And even though it might be uncommon on the surface, I still believe there's a lot of people who think exactly the same like me. When they are confronted with something that's just better what they do, which happens to me often, then you can still reference out, right? You're not losing anything. You're not losing customers. At the same time, I even believe you are building the respect and the legacy where you say, listen, I want to be honest with everybody, and these are the facts. So now I'm going to share 10 things that I love about the Pro Kettlebell. Number 1, Nikolai and Amber's philosophy. They're both Christians. That's one thing that I really appreciate. And I've had a couple of conversations with Nikolai now, and I get to know him better, and I appreciate his honesty. I appreciate his drive, his craftsmanship. He's a very intellectual guy, and he doesn't stop no matter what confronts him. All the problems that he comes along that are facing him, he always is looking for a solution, and that's exactly the same entrepreneurial mindset that I'm striving for. And we also had some issues. I had a couple of complaints. I reached out to him, and they took care of it the proper way, and always very quickly. And even if it took a little longer, we had a back and forth, and it was all these matters were explained, were discussed, and in some cases, he even apologized and said for certain situations that are just beyond his control, he still apologized for it, which I believe is the hallmark of a good businessman or a good company or brand that says, listen, it's an issue with our supply chain, but on behalf of my brand, I want to apologize for it. Second, the Pro Kettlebell is made in the USA. You know, I'm not American, I live in Switzerland, but I truly respect the idea of keeping the jobs at home in that regard, on that front. And Nikolai shared a lot of interesting details about that process with me. And as he was sharing that process, I had so many thoughts crossing my mind telling me, wow, you have all these issues, all these problems, but still you decide to take the high road and not manufacture stuff overseas and say, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna take it overseas, I'm gonna do it differently. But by the way, as we all also learned, which I recommended him, is to keep the secret sauce in his own hands, because as soon as you give something out of your hands, especially overseas, there might be trouble down the line, as we have seen in that hollow core story. And this again goes to show to his credibility, to his philosophy, and his integrity that he has towards his mission statement. Number 3, now it gets a little bit more technical, the stuff that many of you might be interested in, and that is you have these contoured arm pockets that are soft for the forearms. And there's also a little bit of history behind it. Valery Fedorenko came up with this idea and started collaborating with Rogue, and then apparently it seems like Rogue kicked him out of the business, and then they were doing their own stuff, and you see these kettlebells with these little dents. But the way I saw them, I always looked at them with a critical eye, because I was like, I'm not sure if these arm pockets are really suitable. And with Nikolai's idea, he expanded on those grounds, and he created his own mold, his own idea of these arm pockets. And this version is just so incredibly comfortable. You're not banging your forearms. Banging your forearms, of course, is a skill question as well, but you do not always hit that same spot, where if you do lots of cleans and snatches, or you have the kettlebells in the rack position for a long time, then you develop these ugly bone calluses, and you're able to not only avoid them, but also if you're a professional, you're able to really grow these calluses back. Because when you look at the professionals, the sport athletes, they have these bumps right here, and that looks really ugly, and it's probably also a little bit painful. And funny thing is, now if I pick up my own brand of kettlebells that doesn't have the arm pockets, I already feel that I got a little bit sensitized on my forearms, which is not a big issue, but it's just especially for beginners. If you want to get started with the kettlebell and you don't want these calluses and you want to get a proper shortcut to success and a great feeling for your forearms, the ProKettlebell is the way to go. Number 4, the high quality texture finish on the kettlebell handle. This means that you will stop turning your palm skin into hamburger meat. Of course, again, I have to mention this is also a skill question, but it is just uncomparable to these standard kettlebells where the handle becomes very slippery and then you have to use lots of chalk, which then again can be detrimental to your palm skin again. And when I pick up the ProKettlebell for a spin, I rarely use chalk. Granted, I don't do these long kettlebell sport sets, but I still work intensively with them. I sweat intensively, but that texture makes sure that you still have some sort of a grip. And Nikolai shared that it's not just the complete handle where you have that texture, but he also thought about certain spots that need a little bit more texture and certain spots that need a little bit less. Because he is a kettlebell sport athlete who came up with this idea and he understood that this is what a kettlebell is supposed to need, or this is what a kettlebell needs in order for normal people to get the greatest bang for the buck and the greatest feeling when they pick it up for a spin, and you feel it when you train with it. Number 5, the ergonomics. The ProKettlebell is a little bit smaller and the weight sits closer to your center of mass. This means you have better control. And when you press it overhead, the kettlebell wants to stay or tends to stay a little bit more in that center line that you always want to focus on, which is just from an ergonomic perspective. When you do lots of reps, it just feels better. The numbers go through the roof for the athletes. And if you're just getting started or you don't want to compete, it's just you get this immediate powerful flow feeling, an improved flow feeling, so to speak. Then number 6, we have the hollow core, of course, which is you get that immediate super flow feeling. And super flow, I call it that way because the weight sits closer to the handle and therefore closer to your center of mass, which means the kettlebell is not that bottom heavy, which means when you engage your strongest muscles in the body, in the ballistics, which are your legs and your midsection in general, then you are able to push the weight that's closest to the body away from you, which grants you that flow feeling because that bottom heaviness is gone. And number 7, you have the wide base, which means you have more stability for ground exercises. Number 8, the kettlebell can be used as a second grip because of that wide hollow core base, which allows for a couple of new exercises. Number 9 is the aesthetics. The paint is solid, and if it cracks, it's not protruding in any sense that it might hurt you on the forearm or on the hand. Then you have number 10, that magnetic weight chip, which can turn your 8s, your 12s, your 16, your 20s into 22s, 18s, 14s, 10s, and that's especially useful for women because we have seen that 10s and 14s, these 2 kg increments in between, are great for women to advance with their weights. However, there's one little downside that I also shared with Nikolai, and that is if you use that 2 kg increment to a 24, it increases or adds the bottom heaviness, which the hollow core is supposed to take away. And finally, I have a little pro tip, and that is you can forcefully push the base of the kettlebell down on the floor to unlock the chip easily, but you have to be careful because adequate flooring is required. That sums it up. I think the ProKettlebell is a beast. That's the reason why I want to work closer together with Nikolai down the front, 100% transparent here. We have some great ideas that we juggle back and forth, and I see that this collaboration is growing. It's growing in trust, it's growing in stability, and we are going to collaborate much more down the line. And for those of you who are also wondering, you're asking Nikolai, you're asking me as well, yes, we are working on a solution to bring the ProKettlebell into the EU so that we can get rid of these taxes and these unnecessary shipping costs. This might take a little time, but if you're patient, I guarantee you we will be able to pull this off. And of course, if you're looking to buy a ProKettlebell, you can use my code LEBESTARK, the link in the description, to get 10% off your next purchase. And here's the next thing that you have to do. Clean and press that like and subscribe button. Share with a friend who's also interested in kettlebells. And if you made it this far, go buy yourself a Pro Kettlebell and download my free ebook in the first link in the description. If you're over 40, 50, or 60, you don't have a lot of time, but you still want to take care of your fitness, that's where the kettlebell comes in. And I have a shortcut for you to success so you don't have to piece that information all together by yourself, which by the way can take you years. I'm going to give you this easy shortcut with that handy ebook. It's 100% free. You'll find it in the first link in the description.